capitalism and socialism are supposed to be opposites. But ask 10 people what those words actually mean, and you'll get 10 completely different answers. Entire political arguments, revolutions, even identities are built on terms people don't define the same way. That's where the confusion begins. In its simplest form, capitalism refers to an economy where most production is privately owned and coordinated through markets. Prices, competition, and profit act as the primary organizing mechanisms. Socialism, at least in theory, describes a system where major resources or industries are collectively owned, and economic decisions are guided by social priorities rather than market outcomes. On paper, these definitions sound clean, almost symmetrical. But real economies are not. At its core, capitalism runs on private ownership and markets. Individuals and companies own property, create businesses, take risks, and compete. Prices, profits, and losses act as signals. They shape what gets produced, what survives, and what disappears. In theory, the logic is simple. If people want something, markets reward those who provide it efficiently. And if they don't, businesses disappear. Supporters of capitalism often point to its ability to generate growth. Competition pushes firms to innovate. Profit motivates investment. Decentralized decision-making allows economies to adapt quickly. Entire industries can emerge, transform, or collapse without centralized direction. But capitalism also produces outcomes that fuel criticism. Markets do not distribute rewards equally. They amplify advantages, concentrate wealth, and often leave essential needs dependent on purchasing power rather than necessity. Success and failure are uneven by design. Economic cycles, financial crises, and structural inequalities are not accidents of the system. They are recurring features of it. For critics, this raises uncomfortable questions. Should access to healthcare, housing, or education depend primarily on market forces? Should efficiency alone determine social priorities? Because markets respond to profitability, not fairness. Yet defenders argue that attempts to suppress market mechanisms create different problems: reduced incentives, lower innovation, rigid structures that struggle to adapt. Which brings us to socialism. Socialism is often framed as capitalism's alternative, emphasizing collective ownership and social coordination. Instead of leaving major decisions entirely to markets, resources and industries are guided, and sometimes owned by the public or the state. The central idea is not simply redistribution, it is control over how economic value is created and allocated. Where capitalism prioritizes competition and private incentives, socialism prioritizes stability and collective outcomes. In theory, this allows societies to reduce inequality, guarantee basic services, and protect citizens from market volatility. Essential sectors can be insulated from profit pressures. Long-term planning can replace short-term competition. But socialist models introduce their own tensions. Centralized decision-making concentrates power. Bureaucracies replace price signals. Political incentives begin shaping economic outcomes. Without competitive pressure, inefficiencies can persist. Without market feedback, misallocation becomes harder to detect. Supporters see protection and fairness. Critics see rigidity and reduced dynamism. Which is why the debate between capitalism and socialism rarely resolves into a clear verdict. Both systems promise solutions. Both generate trade-offs, contradictions, and unintended consequences. More importantly, neither exists in its pure theoretical form. Modern economies blend market mechanisms with state intervention, private ownership with public institutions, competition with regulation. Yet the argument persists, not because one side has been decisively proven right or wrong, but because the debate is not only about economics, it is about values. How societies define fairness, how they tolerate inequality, how they balance freedom, security, risk, and stability. And those questions do not have universal answers, which is why capitalism versus socialism remains an endless debate, not a puzzle waiting for a final answer, but a permanent tension in how societies choose to organize themselves.